Hello again to the Discovery Lab Series. I'm pleased to have a great fungi colleague with me here today, Dr. Vivian Sandoval, who is an entomologist and has specialized in beetles and fungi interactions and has done many varied things, including making fungi and insect jewellery, which is one of the coolest things about Vivian. So there's so much to talk about, Vivian. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'd like you to introduce yourself and just talk about what inspired you to become a scientist, and especially entomologist and a mycologist.
Okay, thank you very much, Sandra. Well, yes, I'm Vivian. I'm originally from Colombia, and my career started when I was like, I don't know, 11 years old. I went with my parents. In Colombia, it's not so common like here that you're going on a trekking or national park during weekends. It's not so common there because it's we have some problems, like it's not so safe. But well, once I went with my parents to a very nice national park, and I met a lot of people, and they say, wow, I would like to do something like that. I would like to become a ranger or something related. And well, after that, I just get obsessed with everything related with biology, and then I just started focusing in tiny things. So when I get to uni, so I went to uni to study biology. It's a like biology course in Colombia, and my first like projects were with some very nice guys that were working there with like the relation between humans and nature. Like it was a laboratory that were with that, and they were working more with forensic entomology. So I started working with flies, and we had like a project with they donate to the project like a crop. Yes, from like some person that wasn't recognized, and no one look after his body. So we got a permission to get a liver of this person, and we had a very nice project. We were crazy, just having a look at what kind of insects were coming and into these remains. And so I started with that. It was very nice, but yes, the smell, it's not very nice. So then I said, okay, well, flies are good and insects are good, but what else I can work with? And I went to work with ants. So that was a little bit better. Like the ants are very diverse, and we have more than 2,000 species of ants in the world. 12,000 species. Well, maybe now there are more. And yes, I've got several teachers, very good like professors that were helping with that. And I had several projects and travel around the world with ants at the beginning. And then I went to my PhD and went to Brazil. And in Brazil, I just changed my group again and started working with beetles. But this time was beetle fungi interaction, and was really good because it was another universe. Like yes, I was going like from the bigger things to smaller, because these tiny beetles, they have like 2 millimeters and they are so important. They are everywhere. You can, like, every mushroom or every fungi that you collect in the field, they can be there. They will be there like tiny black spots. And they are doing a very nice like ecological role, eating these mushrooms, eating these fungi. So, well, yes, I've been doing several things, and I arrived to Australia, and here I'm still running my projects, like my personal project with fungi and things like that. But also, yes, I'm working now with flies, with fruit flies, with the Department of Agriculture. So, well, that's a very brief introduction.
Well, that sounds really cool. And I'm just going to, out of curiosity, just backtrack a little bit to this liver that you worked with of this deceased person. So you were just looking at the liver
Yeah.
decomposition and the organisms that you've noticed, the insects that would come, and is that correct? And what kind of insects were there in this liver?
Well, yes. So usually, every dead body or whatever, a little bird or another kind of invertebrates, like the first one to come are flies. So the flies are the first ones to come. They will lay their eggs in the tissue, and then the maggots will be eating and like trying to decompose this new source of food. So what we were trying to figure out was the time, like there's we call like succession, like I don't know if the right term, like so first they come one kind of insect, like another can, and they can share sometimes, like some period they can be together, but sometimes they are like exclusive, one group and then the other. So yeah, so first the insect, within the insects are the flies, then comes some well, flies and the ants, also ants, they like to come first, but the role is completely different. The ants are trying to eat also the flies, and also beetles come and will try to eat, like they will eat the flesh, but also will eat other insects. So there are some predator beetles that are coming, and well, there are millions of groups. It's really, really nice. But yeah, the conditions of the study are really bad because of the smell. So it's not so nice to stay in front of something that is getting rotten for such a long time. You all get get all of this smell. Yes. So, but yes, was a very nice experience. Like, was my very first experience with entomology. And I have friends that are working with that now, and they love, and they are like experts in the world. Yes.
Vivian, that is amazing. That is one of the coolest things I have ever heard in terms of scientists researching sort of forensic entomology. I just think it's fascinating. It does stink, but the amazing creatures that you often see on dead bodies, it just shows that there's this beauty in death at the same time, and the amount of life that comes from death, you know, as a result of the feeding frenzy. And I love how you describe that chain of reaction, not only through the succession of what appears first, but also how things eat each other and interact with one another, or don't interact, or wait for specific conditions. That is such a cool, that must have been so cool. Could you not have worn a mask of some sort, or like a breathing apparatus to help with the smell?
Yes, sure. You can use, yes, of course, it's important to use a lot of protection, more when you're working with bodies. But like most of these projects with forensic entomology, like the tests, they are done with pigs, usually, not with corpse, with real bodies, persons, like dead ones. Now this is so usually it's with pigs or with dogs. It has all this procedure to get permission. So yes, it's so it was nice for me, but I didn't want to to work my whole life with that. So that's the reason that I changed to something like more easier to collect. You don't need to have so many protection. I'm just going to the field with a knife and collect some fungi and put it in a box, and that's all. So yeah, so that's a different kind of entomology, I think.
Yeah, and with these beetles in the fungi, does there have to be, for the beetles to live in the fungi, like obviously the fruiting body has to grow first, is there a particular stage when the fruiting body is ready to invite beetles to live? Or is that a simultaneous thing that happens as the mushroom grows? Like, what are the timelines in terms of, you know, fruiting body versus beetle arrival, or how does that happen?
Yeah, so that's very difficult to respond because we don't have all the knowledge about that. We don't have a lot of tests, experiments. So some studies show that they come just after the mushroom release their spores. So they are attracted by the smell of the spores. But for example, I've collected in the field small mushrooms that they are not mature. And after some weeks I will get some beetles from these samples. So I usually collect and put it in a closed container. So yeah, so maybe the females and mothers, they will lay the eggs when the mushroom is growing. They will know, well, in some days this mushroom will be ready. So yeah, so it depends, and also depends of the group of beetles. We have different group of beetles that are coming, that are being attracted to these mushrooms. So because we have the difference between the real mushroom, or the ones that are fleshy, like oyster mushroom, like yes, all sorts of edible ones, for example. And we have also the ones that are very hard, like bracket fungi. So they will be attacked by different kinds of beetles also. So the ones that last for a few days, these beetles, they need to be so their life cycle needs to be very fast, because they will lay eggs, and in some days they need to become larvae and eat the fungi and then pupate and then be an adult. So these mushrooms can last a week maximum. But we have the other hand, in the other hand, we have the big ones that can last years. So for example, we have Ganoderma, this big bracket fungi that they every year they will release a new kind of spores. So yeah, they have different mechanisms. These other beetles can live for years and years and years just eating a little bit of this mushroom. And that's nice, because when there will be like a time that they will stop producing spores, and they will, like, you know, that all these fruiting bodies, they are just the fruits of the fungi that are eating the trunk, or well, whatever kind of wood. So when this all the fruit inside the wood is not enough, like, so they will need to go and try to find another wood to infest. So yeah, so they are just recycling, like these beetles are recycling these big flesh, big pieces of hard fungi that will stay for years and years and years in nature without anyone touching or eating. And most of them are not edible also. Well, are edible for them, like they can eat very toxic kinds of mushrooms, but yes, other group of invertebrates or vertebrates can do that. So that's very nice also. And that the things that I'm doing now, they are similar with the things that I did at the beginning of my career, because usually I'm collecting these. Now I'm collecting a lot of fleshy mushrooms, and like my colleagues from the society also, they collect. Vivian, I have lots of grubs in this sample. Do you want? Yes, sure, I want it. And I get these mushrooms and in a couple of days they are just rotten. And it's horrible, and I have all these grubs inside, and yes, I need to try to grow them and wait to see if what they are going to turn into, because it's really hard to identify the immature stage. The grubs is really hard. You need to have adults, and sometimes I don't have adults, I just have some grubs. So yes, it's not an easy task, but it's really nice.
And is the whole point of actually just studying what species of, are you identifying? Are you doing the taxonomy of these beetles? Because it hasn't been done before. Yeah. And in terms of...
So we are, like, my projects have been always related with taxonomy, like, because we have so many species. They are so tiny, and they haven't been studied for a lot of persons around the world. Like I can, with my two hands, I can name the person that has been working with this kind of beetles. So we have few people, and that's nice. And they are tiny, so they are not so charismatic compared with stacked beetles or butterflies, things like that. So yeah, there's so many things to do with them. And even at the museums, yes, there you have lots and lots of drawers with these tiny beetles that no one wants to look at, because they're so tiny. So yes, I've been trying to work with that. We have like a very important person in Australia that has been working with this group of beetles before. That is John Lawrence, and he's retired now. So he was working for CSIRO, and his passion is this group of beetles. So I'm trying to continue his studies. He is working with other problems now, like other group of very complicated beetles, and I'm trying to continue the project that I had before in South America and collecting. So the idea now is to, because we still don't know if these beetles have like a preference for one kind of mushrooms or fungi or two or three. So we want to know if they are generalists or if they just want like just can live in one kind, one species. So that's the nice thing. I want to like to build interaction networks between mushrooms and fungi, mushroom and the beetles, and then try to understand that. So that's very nice. And yes, I can. Well, that's a very, very big like project, because you need to get information from other places, not only in Australia, because we have many kinds of fungi that are the same genus, the same group. It's in other parts of the world, because they are very, very old groups. So that's the nice thing. We can try to figure out what else, like not only put names, but what they are eating, why they are eating that, and what's their life cycle, things like that. So we can respond to lots of questions. So.
That's so interesting. And how many different types of, or the genuses of, or the, you know, the types of genus that you see, but because beetles are such ubiquitous group of insects and being so ancient as well, I'm just wondering whether there are specific types of beetles that are attracted, or is a huge variety that itself is a problem?
Yes, we have some families that can be attracted, but not the whole family. So for example, some families that are just living inside fungi are, for example, Ciidae. That is the family that I've been working with. Is Ciidae, Ciidae. Yes, so they are. We call like mycetobions, that are their whole life cycles occurs inside the fungi. So from eggs, larvae will be eating the flesh, and also the adults will be living inside. They will reproduce, they will mate, they will be the whole time in the mushroom. But we have other groups that they can stay just for some period of their life, just during baby for their larvae, and then they can just go away and find other sources when they are adults. So yeah, we have Ciidae, we have Tenebrionidae, we have Mycetophagidae. Well, there are plenty of groups. But yes, beetles, it's a very, very huge group of insects. But it seems that most of the beetles, like the beginnings of the beetles, were the beetles that were eating fungi, like eating rotten stuff, or like detritivores beetles. So yeah, so they are like groups that are more ancient compared with the predator ones, and that's very nice also. Yes, there are many things that we can try to understand, studying their relationships with the fungi, but yeah, so we need time and more people interesting also, a few people.
And it's what you mentioned, that they play a very important ecological role in this decomposition of fungi. So what is the role, in the sense that, is it because they're turning these mushrooms back to the molecular form and pooing out the nutrients that are there? Is that what is the ecology of
Yes, so that's the idea. So through their poop, they will bring all these nutrients that were inside the mushrooms or the fungi to the soil. And they are, you know, that some mushrooms, they have lots of different important heavy metals that we have in the soil, and they are very scarce. And yes, they do that, like they just eat, and then poop everything out, and they will become like getting to this cycle again. That's very important. Also, they can, well, that's another thing, important role, but there's a little bad thing is that they can be pests also of commercial mushrooms. So here in Australia, we already had some problems, and I got in touch with some farmers. One mushroom farm, they had some problem last year, and we were trying to work together to figure out what happened, because they have some tiny beetles eating their nice oysters. And that can happen with other kinds of fungi that are used for edible or medicinal purposes. So we have, for example, some of the species that I'm working in Australia, I'm describing at this moment, they were introduced from China. They came with some, so they were grabbed by biosecurity in the border inside some dry mushrooms that came from China. So that's another thing that they can. And we have a very nice example of that, is that we have one species of this particular family that became, it's Australian, it's an Australian species of a genus called Cis, and it went to Europe, and now it's an invasive species into Europe. So it was a tiny little beetle here, just living in mushrooms, and went to England through like samples of the herbarium. So they sent some plants, like dry ones, and some samples. And I imagine that they sent also some dry fungi for like these exchanges that the museums does. And then maybe just one of them were alive, had alive beetles inside, and they became a very big problem and they are still expanding through Europe. So that's very nice. It's an Australian tiny beetle that now it's an invasive species in Europe.
Vivian, I love how you talk about, it's so nice to have a rotting liver. And it's so nice to have an invasive species going to Europe. I love that, because it's such an... Well, it's so interesting, and and it is fascinating. There's nothing to be sort of it's just a fact, and it's just such a fascinating...
Yes, and it happens, like it can't happen.
Yeah,
like it's not the fault. It happens. It's the same when we get some introduced species, something wrong happen, and well, then we need to try to fix that problem.
Yeah. Or allow the biological laws of nature and the way that nature always knows best. So it's obviously a good niche for these beetles, and often they become extinct. It might become extinct in Australia, but then the species is saved because it's living in England on the industry of mushrooms. So there's nothing really that happens. It's there are so many examples of how nature survives, and it's really cool. The other thing I wanted to ask you about these beetles is, because I'm assuming fungi are quite difficult to decompose, just like cellulose and lignin, and they have chitin, which is quite a hefty thing to decompose by any, digest by any organism. I wonder if it's biota, some sort of other fungi or bacteria or anything like that lives in the gut of these beetles to help them digest the chitin in the fungi.
Yes, well, we don't have any studies about that. That's a very nice project. But yes, we have that. We know that other group of insects, they have associated biota in their gut. So yes, maybe they will, but we don't have anything. We don't know anything about it at this moment. But yes, that must be because they are eating mushrooms that were eating wood also. So there must be some connection with some kind of bacteria or fungi that are doing the same or something similar with other group of beetles.
And when the grubs, because when the eggs are laid in the mushroom by the mum, she'll the grubs then feed on those mushrooms, don't they? They have to feed on the flesh of the fungi first. And then when they become an adult, do they still feed, or do they move on and, try and munch on another mushroom or lay eggs? Like, what is the life cycle? Do you know many life cycles yet? Have you observed them?
Yes. So we have several projects with life cycles. It's not an easy task, because they are living inside the mushrooms or the fungi. So it's hard to know how many days last every period of their life as a grub, because they change. Yeah, they change their we call they mold to a new instar. So that's really hard to know. I've been doing some project with that, but we need to have more. I don't know. I've been trying to figure out what's the best way to have them in an artificial diet, so we can look every day of their life cycle. But when they are inside the mushroom, it's really hard to see, because if they are making little chambers, and if you open these chambers, they will just die. They won't be happy with that. But yes, we know that the whole life cycle is inside. So for example, in the case of the family Ceidae, the larvae are eating the flesh of this fungi, the bracket fungi, and then turns into a pupae inside one of these chambers that mom made to lay the eggs. Then the adults will stay inside the mushroom. We'll try to find a mate. So sometimes when the mushroom, the fungi is too old, they will try to fly and find another nice new one to lay their new eggs, so to have their babies. But sometimes when the fruiting body is very big, they won't care. They will stay inside and just mate inside, and that's all. So yes, it depends on where they are living. And also the size, because we have, so this family that I've been working, the size goes from 1 millimeter to 8 millimeters. So we have a big ones that are Africa. Very, very nice. It's a genus called Xylographus. So that was my PhD study, and they're huge. Well, not so huge. 8 millimeters is not so much. 8 millimeters. These guys are usually in the big bracket fungi, this big Ganoderma, Phyllimus, thing like that. So yeah, so we still have a lot of things to do, to learn, and yes, I'm always trying to get some spare time, because the problem is that I'm not working that's not my pay job at this moment. So yes, I try to get a spare time to continue with these projects and get help also from other people that are getting samples for me.
Sounds wonderful. I'd love to have a go at looking at little beetles inside fungi. It sounds so cool. Every time I see them, I get excited. I should start working not so much with the light microscope, obviously, but with the dissecting microscope, because that's where you get to see all this wonderful life. Vivian, I think you might have mentioned whether there's a specific beetles only have the one mushroom type, or the specific species of mushroom that they work with, or do you see the same species of beetle on different types of fungi?
Yes, so we have both cases. So we have some genus they just eat, for example, Pycnoporus, that are these nice orange mushrooms, orange bracket fungi. But also we have some that can eat Pycnoporus, that can eat Trametes, different kind of mushrooms. So that's what we want to know. So that's the reason that we need to have more samples with more, identify the host, identify the kind of mushroom that they are living and what they are eating, and also identify the beetles. So that's so we need an entomological task. We have entomological task and mycological task. And sometimes it's really hard to get that connection. Sometimes mycologists are just looking to mushrooms. Entomologists are looking to insects, but they don't realize that we need, in some cases, they are very, very connected. So we need to work in a team usually. And that's the reason that I'm trying to get involved in groups of mushrooms here in Australia, and groups that work with insects also, because yes, that's the only way that I will be able to have more information about what I'm trying to study.
Yes, and this is a common problem in science, isn't it? Where we have every single part of life has got chemistry, physics, quantum physics, biology, it's got microbiology, everything is connected. And whenever we try to dissect of any problem and study it in isolation, we will always run into not discovering the entire story, because there are so many aspects to everything we study that is completely interconnected with many, many other aspects of life, and so many multidisciplinary potentials. And I do agree with you that it's such a lovely way to study things in unison with a variety of experts, so that you have a bigger picture and therefore a more robust understanding of what is actually going on in nature or in any sort of endeavor of study. I also would like to know, Vivian, what is the relationship between these beetles and fungal spore dispersal? Do they play a role in that as well?
Yes, well, that's also a controversial stuff. Some people say that they are just killing the spores, so they are not nice as bees are with plants, that bees will carry the pollen. Yes, but some people say that maybe they are also dispersing. We don't have a specific study to confirm that at this moment, because there are huge difference between these hard fungi like the brackets and these fleshy ones like bullets and other sorts of edibles. So yes, we still don't know. Like many people, for example, people that work with mushrooms, they consider insect bad things. So usually they don't like grubs inside their samples. Yes, they consider that they are a pest, they are attacking, but we still don't know. Like in an entomological view, we still don't know if they can also try to disperse. Yeah, so some of them, they have like a special mouth parts to eat just spores. And so if they are eating the spores, they will be, of course, that will be bad for the spore, for the fungi. But yeah, so we still don't know. I've heard that some people think that maybe they can also help to, because they are everywhere. So you can see there. If you just, I don't know, I find an amanita in the field and look underneath, you will see lots of tiny black beetles running around, and if you disturb, they just fly and go to another. Or they go to the ground. So maybe they can have some spores in their body, but we don't know.
And the beautiful thing about fungi is they produce millions of spores, millions and millions. And obviously it's just as important to disperse spores as to create the nutrients that are in that fungi, decompose those nutrients back to the ground. So, this is the whole thing, that nature works in unison. And I'm imagining that these relationships between these fungi and these beetles have been around for millions of years, if not longer. So therefore, they're not a pest, it's part of the ecosystem, and that's part of the species that has to decompose these fleshy or non-fleshy fungi that are probably pretty hard to decompose, and this is why the beetle is the guy to do it. So I always look at nature. It's there and it's doing its thing. There's a reason for it, and we just don't understand. And this is lovely to be able to study these things and get a better understanding of these amazing relationships that occur. Such a fascinating project you have going, Vivian. I'm really sorry that there's not enough funding or there is, maybe there is, I don't know, but that there's no funding really available oftentimes for these fascinating discoveries, because there's so much to learn ecologically, and understanding these relationships, I feel, is not only fascinating but really important as well. And it's such a shame. In terms of, if you said you like people working on this project with you, what are some of the ways people can contribute to your project, and what equipment would they need? Like, how could we make this happen?
Oh yes, so that's simple. So, well, we have some restriction of collections, of collection of insects or fungi in natural parks or state forests, something like that. But for example, people that have a very nice property with a little piece of land, a little piece of old trees, so if they are the owners of that property, they can collect without any problems. So what I usually ask for people is, well, look, if you find like an old bracket fungi or an old mushroom or some, I don't know, whatever kind of fungi that they find with some signals of grabs inside, some signals of that little holes or some movement around, they can just send me a message, put it in a tiny container, in a sealed container, and send it to me by mail. But yeah, so we have the problem is they need to be in their property, or they need to have like a permission from the owner of that property. But I can ask people, go for a track, and if you find in whatever park fungi, grab it for me now, because they are. Yes, so we need to have a special permit for that. Mm-hmm. But if it's private property, it's easy. Just put it in a container. So what the tools that I'm using is just a small knife, but yes, you can walk around with a knife sometimes. So, but usually like a little something that you can cut the entire fruiting body, and that's all, and put it in a takeaway container or in a Ziploc bag. So yes, that's easy. You don't need to. Sometimes, well, if I recommend to use gloves if you don't know if there are spiders or scorpions in this, because I've received huge fruiting body like. So this one, there's lots of other kinds of invertebrates can live, or other snakes or things can live around or inside. So yes, it's to be a little bit careful to go when you're going to collect, just to be sure that they're nothing poison or something like that. Yes, that's all. Like, I can give you my email and people can just send me messages, because sometimes other way of helping is sending photos. I've got a lot of photos of people saying, look, I found these nice mushrooms in my backyard. It has these flies. Well, I'm not an expert in flies, but I can also suggest things about, like, know a little bit about other group of insects that are living in mushrooms. Yeah, so that's another, like, okay, that's good, because that's another point of collection, or another point that we know that they can live here in Australia. So that's good also.
And if people wanted to actually study the beetles themselves, or have a look what's in the mushroom, could they just get a dissecting microscope and really just start looking and taking photographs of what they're seeing?
Yes, sure. You've done that for me. You remember?
Yep.
Some people do that. Like, they have a small microscope, just take some picture. Look, I found this little graph. What it is? So is that interesting for you? And say, oh yes, it is. So send it to me. If not, yes, it's very common. If I can give it a name, that's fine. Like, but it's good to know, like, to have more new registers of places. So because we are not able to go everywhere collecting, we don't have the time, we don't have the funding to do that. But it's nice when people have their own properties. Like, oh look, I found this, and well, maybe you can be interested in. So that's a very good way of help in this kind of project. So that the idea is to get involved normal people that like to do citizen sciences, and yes, why not?
Yeah, that sounds awesome. You mentioned also that there are other insects on fungi, and I certainly see a lot of flies. I also see spiders that are not insects, but they're there. So how many different types of...
We have thousands of species that are related with mushroom or fungi in general. Yes, we have good. We have ants living inside the mushroom. We have termites. We have spiders, as you talked before. We have lots of more kinds of beetles, of course. We have flies. We have even moths also living inside mushrooms. So yes, it's a very big list. And it's very complex, and we still don't know a lot about them.
Yeah, I think fungi are such a great habitat and food source. And every time, I take a photo of a mushroom or another fruiting body, it's only on, when I look at the photo on the computer screen that I see, oh, there's another insect. Oh, there's another something, there's always something. And you don't get to see it when you're taking the photo because you're so concentrated on getting the right pic of the mushroom and the fruiting body that you kind of miss all these interactions that are happening. And once again, we don't know much about these interactions. And from my understanding, there aren't many people in the world that study these interactions, from what you said earlier. Is that correct?
Yes, not at all. The real problem is that as they are not considered like pests, the funding is really hard to get. So if you're working with some very nice pests of a crop, will be or an invasive species will be easier to get funding for projects, for research. But yes, when they are just nice insects doing a very nice ecological role, yes, government and sometimes doesn't care about it. So yes, it's really hard. And so most of the researches are done by students. For example, my supervisor in Brazil, he has many students working with that. So that's like more pure science. But as we don't have a lot of applied science, we can applicate, like we have some groups that can be pests, but few compared with the big amount of beetles that are doing that. So yes, it's really hard to get to be visible and to get the attention from other institutions to try to have bigger projects, things like that. Yes, but well, who knows, someday.
Yes,
but yes, we still have lots of things like that have been done even with few resources. Yes, well, many papers describing new species from all over the world. So that's really good.
I think it's a great opportunity for citizen scientists because it's not, even though it's difficult to identify the beetles, I still think it's, just having that data there through photos and through drawings, whatever, just through descriptions, and even just saying this type of fungi is with this beetle, just great project. I think I can imagine lots of children would be very interested in starting something like that. And then of course,
yes,
you would be the experts, so they'd be sending the photos to you to identify.
Yes, the real problem is like they are so tiny. A normal camera, a phone camera, won't be enough for that. You need to use macro lenses. But that's the thing. That's the reason that I said yes. You can collect, and if you find something, just let me know that I can. So that will be like a channel between getting information from your normal community and bringing to the museum or bringing to some place that we can handle, and we can take the nice photos in a very nice microscope and try to finish that part of the process of the project. So yes, we always need to be in touch with an expert, otherwise it's really hard. Like with tiny insects, it's different if you have like butterflies or big spiders, but with tiny one, sometimes even for me, just the photos, just the insect like in the microscope is not enough. I need to dissect it. I need to remove the genitalia. I need to put it in a slide. So that's a very, very hard process. I need to compare the genitalia of this one with the other to see if they're the same species or different, because there are some cryptic species. So yes, it's a little bit tricky. But yes, so we ask for help usually. So that's the idea, is to involve the community, involve the people. Yes, you're interesting. I can tell about what's the important roles and everything like that. But if you find something interesting, send it to me or send it to the museum, for example, because that will be the best place to try to analyze this material. Yes, it does. Right.
Sounds fantastic, Vivian. It sounds like, nothing's impossible. And I think one day we'll have technologies that can probably, I always had dreamed of, this possibility of having some sort of an X-ray machine that takes 3D or even beyond 3D, that you can just scan the organism and it shows you all the structures, you know. There could be technologies that we haven't even dreamed of yet, one day developed, so we don't even have to do dissections. You just have these amazing X-ray machines. I don't know, but that's something, because you know, we have this hunger for knowledge, we have this hunger for understanding and seeing, and I think the only thing that stops us is our own imagination, you know. And meeting people like you just really shows me just how the impossible can be done if you just put your heart to it. And even if you're not getting paid, you can still, you know, toil and have so much fun just because you love it, just because you're doing it for the love. Yeah.
So that's like, I've been working as a volunteer for Queensland Museum since I arrived to Australia. So they gave me like an honorary position there. So I'm allowed to go to the museum, to work with the collection. I'm helping with identifying these tiny beetles for them. And that's really nice. Like, I love that. I'm not being paid, but I know that what I'm doing is very important, because no one will. And that's the reason that I said, yes, you can even send things to the museum, because there will be paid staff or non-paid, because we have lots at the museum. We have lots of volunteers, lots of people that are very happy that helping, and they have like a big knowledge. Most of them are retired people that work with taxonomy and insects and other group of animals, and I have nice projects, and they retire and now they want to continue sharing their knowledge. So that's really cool, and I like that for Australia. So that's not so common in South America, where I'm coming from. It's not so common to have volunteers now. So that's really, really cool. Like, I know that you can help. If you want, you can. There are so many places that you can do that. Yes.
That's just lovely to hear. That's just really nice to hear that there's all these opportunities. I really thank you for doing this interview with us today. Lastly, I want to just talk about your jewellery making, because you've been making beautiful, like just really inspiring jewellery of insects and fungi as well, as I understand. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I've been always collecting insects and mushroom crafts. You can see I have a little bit collection here. I like handcraft stuff, and I started making my own jewelry with beads usually. And a lot of people say, "Oh, it's so beautiful! Where did you find it?" No, I made them. So okay, so I just started thinking, okay, maybe I can make some more and show to my friends and offer to people, and maybe, yes, who knows, I can start like a small business with that. And yes, I've been very happy with that. So I was very lucky that the groups where I'm working as a volunteer, like the Entomological Society of Queensland and the Queensland Ecological Society, they allow me to display my jewelry when we have meetings, and that's really nice. And also so I can attract more people, attention to my creations. And also I'm just trying to catch new events. Well, now we can do that because we are all locked down, but for example, last year I went to the native bee conference. And also I went to some big events here in Australia. I went to the entomological conference, the Australian Conference of Entomology, and it was a very, very big conference, and I was just showing my stuff to lots of entomologists. So yes, I'm very happy with that. Using different materials, so I'm using beads, I'm using real like insect shells, I'm using silver, stainless steel, well, different material, different kind of products for different people. And also now I've got some handmade embroidered pendants, because I'm trying also to get connection with other artists, because I can't do everything. Like I don't have a lot of spare time, so I'm trying to catch some Australian artists that like to make things with insects. Say, "Whoa, can you make some for me?" And I will put it in my shop, because I know that I have like a nice niche of people that are interested in this. So yes, I'm very happy with that. And now I have a website, and I'm selling it through my website, as I can go to the meetings. Yes, so the name of my shop is Bags and Beads. because I starting with beads, so I started making things like that, but now I'm just making with insects, so with mushroom. Yes, so that's my small story about my shop.
Yeah, that's lovely. How did you get into this sort of jewelry making? What inspired you, and how old were you when you, or like, were you a kid when you started, or how did it all begin?
Yes, so in South America, like doing beading stuff, like making things with beads, it's very common within like traditional communities. So I always collected earrings and rings and bracelets made with beads. And then I said, well, I love them so much, but I would like to have my own. Like I didn't find any with a nice beetle, thing like that. So I started in there when I was there, just learning how to make them. And there are lots of it's easy there because you can go to a market and you can just ask to someone, just let me know how you're doing that, because they are making in front of you many times. Yes, and then I just started getting, well, with internet, it's really easy to get more ideas and new materials and things like that. So, and also have a point of sale, so that's really nice.
It's really a treasure to see your creations.
Yeah.
I thank you so much for your interview and your time and everything you shared with us. I've found it absolutely fascinating to hear your background more deeply, and just the different things that you've done. That is always, you always find that the more you speak about these things, the more you learn about a person. So it's a treasure to have you on board here with us. Thank you so much, Vivian, once more for spending time with us.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Thank
See
you
you
for
guys.
everything. See you. Bye.